My name is Garrett Cronin. I'm the current chairperson of Middle East GAA here in the region. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining here this evening. And we want to start by welcoming, I guess, all of our club members who are here. Thank you so much for all of your efforts over the season just gone. Appreciate everything that you've done for Middle East GAA. We are sad to see you leave the region, but hopefully this will be beneficial for you here tonight. And also to everybody who's in the meeting here this evening who is not part of Middle East GAA, you're more than welcome. And thank you very much for joining. This is open to anybody and everybody. So I hope that you find it beneficial here this evening also. Just by brief way of overview for Middle East GAA, we are the governing body for Gaelic Games here in the Middle East region, covering 6 countries, namely Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, and the UAE. And we have 16 different clubs around the region who are doing fantastic work on the ground in supporting their club members. So thank you to all of our clubs and all of our administrators around the region for all of the work they do in supporting the members of our clubs. So we're delighted to be joined here this evening by the Crosscare Irish Diaspora Support, by the Teaching Council, by the Citizens Information, and we're very pleased that we can offer something that I think is of great use and is very beneficial to all of you people here this evening who are joining us, who are hoping to return to Ireland, and hope that if you do return to Ireland, maybe you can think of us and also to pass the good word about Middle East GAA to the people who might be traveling in the opposite direction and encourage them to join a club here in the region. We first had Crosscare with us in 2020, which was a fantastic webinar and very informative at the time of COVID when there was a lot of uncertainty in the region. And we obviously had great feedback from that, so we're delighted to have them here again this evening. And I'm going to pass over now to Niall, who's going to lead the session for us this evening. And I want to say thank you very much and have a good evening. Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Garrod, and good evening to everyone from a very sunny, rare sunny Ireland. And thanks, Garrod, for reaching out to us to host this webinar again, which we hope will be of use to those returning both in the near and distant future. Just on the housekeeping front as well, so we strongly encourage anyone with a question they might have throughout the webinar just to pop it into, there's a Q&A box that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. While there may be questions that we can't answer on the spot today, we'll certainly take your details and look to get back to you on it following tonight's webinar. So for this evening's webinar, we're also joined by our partners, the Citizens Information Board, who will be taking us through the really informative Returning to Ireland portal, as well as providing tips on managing your money and shipping your belongings home. And due to the large number of teachers who we hope are joining us tonight, we're also joined by the Teaching Council of Ireland, who've kindly joined us to give those in the teaching profession in the Middle East who may require information on registrations as well as details on the vetting process. And just to say as well that we do understand there are some questions that we know we've got a couple in prior to the webinar, and people may have them throughout the webinar as well, that those in the teaching profession will have. These might be outside the Teaching Council's remit. So the Teaching Council has no role kind of in the employment matters or the payment of teachers. So things like contracts, recognition of service, etc. So we'll be unable to answer those queries tonight, but you can direct those queries to the Department of Education at their email address, info@education.gov.ie. So just to introduce ourselves, so the Crosscare Irish Diaspora Support Project, we're a dedicated service for the Irish diaspora all over the world. So we provide information and advocacy for those both returning to Ireland or emigrating abroad. We provide specialised information on accessing your rights and entitlements. These things include housing, healthcare, social welfare assistance, and we also provide signposting to other services for the areas that we're not necessarily experts in. So if we can't answer any query you have, we will endeavour to help you find the answers to those questions. Our website, diasporasupport.ie, has a huge amount of resources to help you make your informed decision about your return to Ireland and equip you with the information to help you settle back into Ireland as seamlessly as possible. It is a bit of a transition, so hopefully the information we give you tonight, as well as our partners, will be able to help you settle back in as easy as possible whenever that may be. So I'm just going to go on to our first topic of conversation, and I know this is going to be a popular one for a lot of people, and a lot of people have questions and concerns about this. So we're going to firstly just talk you through the idea of buying versus renting. So first up, buying a home. If you're looking to buy as opposed to rent, then our partners over at Citizens Information have a really great guide on their website that talks you through the process and what you'll need to do in order to prepare for that. Obviously, as a lot of people know, the prices are high and demand is even higher at the moment. So we would always say to people not to expect they will secure a home in the first 6 months, and to really plan for a longer period of time searching for a house if that is something that you're looking to do when you come home. In terms of renting, again, I suppose it's very similar in terms of the fact that there is a very high demand in Ireland at present, and the prices are also quite high. What we do recommend if you are coming home and looking to rent is that you kind of begin the process now of having a look at websites such as daft.ie. I think it's quite a fitting name for an Irish property website at the moment, but it's probably the most popular website for finding tenancies. So if you go on there, you can put in certain areas, your budget, and you can see kind of what's available. So you're not kind of shocked when you come home, and you can budget for it and get an idea of what you'd like to rent when you come back. So again, this can be quite a tedious process. So obviously with the demand being so high in Ireland at the moment, we would recommend you have plans to stay somewhere short term with either friends or family when you do get home. It's really, really important that, people don't expect to come into a rental tenancy as soon as you get back, because it can take a little bit of time and a little bit of planning. So yeah, just having somewhere to stay, even for a short-term basis, we would always recommend. We also have a guide on our website that you will need of all the documents that you'll need when you're renting in Ireland. So previous work and landlord references are probably the most important ones that you would be taking home with you. So if you have a landlord reference from the Middle East, it's important that you bring that with you as well. Then when we're looking at, so obviously there will be a lot of people who may be coming home to Ireland and are first time buyers. So there are some schemes available for first time buyers, such as the first home scheme and also the help to buy scheme. Um, I won't go into too much detail on these, as I'm not a property expert, unfortunately. But I would recommend to look into these schemes if you are a first-time buyer. And these are information on these is available actually on the Citizens Information website as well. Um, Depending on your income in Ireland, you might be eligible for social housing supports. So you can register with your local authority, which is the council in the area that, if you grew up in Dublin 15, you would be going to Fingal County Council when you come back to Ireland, and you can register for social housing supports with them. The one thing that social housing supports, I know people often say, well, you don't get offered a social housing property for X amount of years. But if your income actually comes under the threshold, you can apply for what's called the housing assistance payment. So some people think, oh, well, I'm a professional person and, I earn a good wage. That wouldn't be something that I would be eligible for. Strongly consider looking into it, because the threshold is actually decent, and for a lot of people coming back, the prices can be quite high. So having that rental support as well is quite good. So do look into the housing assistance payment and the social housing list and see if you are eligible to apply for them. The thing about the housing assistance payment, just to be clear with people, because some people think it would be the council would find you a rental property. The council will help you to pay the majority of the rental cost, but you will need to find a rental property yourself. So again, going through the likes of daft.ie and that, and doing your homework, and that is really important. Then we're going to move on to accessing healthcare. So Ireland obviously has a two-tier health system. Both public and private healthcare is available. So in order to avail of public healthcare, a person must be considered ordinarily resident. In other words, that really means that they've lived in Ireland for at least a year, or prove that they will be able to live in Ireland for at least a year going forward. In order to access hospital care in Ireland, you must be registered with a GP. So And this is also something that a number of people have had an issue with on return to Ireland, and the availabilities of GPs. So I would say prior to going back, even if you have a family GP that you're with before you left Ireland, getting in touch with your family that are still in Ireland or with the GP itself, and just figuring out if they can fit you onto their list. Um, yeah, and then I think that's probably the quickest way of securing a GP is trying to source one before you come back, either a family GP or someone that your family members are with. I think is always a good option to go with. Um, then we're just looking at a number of schemes for healthcare schemes. So there's a number of healthcare schemes that are available to people in Ireland. The GP visit card is the first that will allow for free GP visits. So it usually costs anywhere between 50 and €70 for an appointment with a GP. Um, for under eights and over 70s, you can get the GP card, GP visit card automatically. And this would mean that there would be free GP visits for anyone under 8 or over 70. Now, they've actually recently extended the eligibility for those between 8 and 70. So it is worth making an application for that. Check out if you are eligible for it, because I know there are nuances to the eligibility criteria, but if you go on, I think you can actually check yourself with them if you would be eligible for that. The drug payment scheme is a scheme that allows you to pay a maximum of €80 per month on prescriptions. So if you do have a high medicine cost each month, this is really worth checking out. There's also the medical cards. Now, the medical cards are means tested. So if you qualify, you receive a free GP visits, medication, as well as other areas where you might have to pay for medical care. But this is a means tested scheme. So they will have a look into your income and things like that. So making sure that you have bank accounts, statements from bank accounts and things like that, if you are looking to apply for that. There is also the long-term illness scheme. So that's covered with that covers you for anything with the medical card, as well as expenses associated with a long-term condition. So again, if you have a long-term condition, it's worth having a look into that to see if you will be eligible. Private health insurance. So as mentioned, Ireland does have a private health system, which you can opt into. There are a number of private health insurers, so best to have a look online and shop around and see which one is giving the best value. You can access private hospital care and acute trauma hospitals, which are often kind of run by in the private insurers themselves. So you'll have like a VHI clinic, and so if you've things like a broken leg or something like that and you don't want to sit around the hospital for 10 hours, you can avail of those services. The next slide then, so we're just looking at social welfare. So again, we experience a lot of people that would be coming home, and you're professional people, and they think, oh, I won't be eligible for social welfare. You may be eligible for certain social welfare payments when you come home, particularly if you are returning home and you're kind of between jobs and things like that. You're more than eligible. And so when you're coming home, you're unemployed for a period of time, make an application for job seekers allowance or benefit. So the difference, and you will, if you are engaged with the social welfare, you'll hear the words benefit or allowance. And just to kind of break those down for you, the difference between the two is that a benefit payment are for those who have enough social insurance contributions. So if you've worked in Ireland for 10 plus years before you left, you will usually have enough contributions then to make a benefit application. The difference between the benefit and the allowance then is that the allowance, you obviously don't have enough social insurance contributions, but you would be eligible for a means test and what's called the habitual residence test as well. So the habitual residence test is something that people often come across when they come home to Ireland, and it can be kind of the biggest hurdle for people accessing payments. This requires kind of a strong documentary proof to show that Ireland is your main centre of interest now. So you can prove this with things such as proof of ending a lease, a job contract, selling a property abroad, closing bank accounts abroad, anything really that demonstrates Ireland is now your main centre of interest. So having those documents all set up before you leave, that's really, really important. Okay, so the next slide, please. Just looking at different scenarios. So I won't go into these too detailed because I'm just conscious of time. But when it comes to returning home with non-Irish family members, there's quite a lot of confusion for people based on the nature of the relationship, the country from which your partner originates from. There's a lot of different kind of elements to it that people can get quite confused as to what exactly they need to do. Now, I'm not going to go into a breakdown of it because that would take too long, but we have a detailed breakdown of the steps to take to identify exactly what is required of you and your partner when returning to Ireland based on your circumstances. So if you go on to diasporasupport.ie, we have all the information there and that'll help you to kind of get your head around this process, because I understand it for a lot of people it can be very confusing. So that's whether you're in a marriage or de facto relationship. And then obviously returning with children, another scenario that we have detailed on our website for people. So we have information which details all you need to know, such as applying for passports, applying for their PPS numbers, child-related income supports from the social welfare as well. So things like child benefits. A lot of people kind of don't think that they would be eligible for it, but absolutely apply for child benefit when you return. And we also have information then on accessing healthcare for your children, coming home to Ireland to give birth, and then also childcare and some of the schemes available around that as well. So the last thing I'm just going to touch on as well, which is something that I suppose a lot of people overlook when they're coming home, which is your well-being. So things like managing your expectations. Consider whether moving is right for you. Speak to others who've done it, as well as friends and family, and decide whether it's the best thing to stay or to go. Be as prepared as possible, do your research, have a plan, look at your options before you move in terms of housing and employment, as we've said. And also, I think attending this webinar is a great step in your planning journey. So accept it takes time to adjust. I think a lot of people kind of, when they come home, they think it'll all just fall into place straight away. Often not the case. It's a different lifestyle, different culture, and even a different language. I know probably in the Middle East, a lot of you are speaking through English, but things will be a little unfamiliar, and just take a time to step back and accept that it's normal to take that time to adjust. I know a lot of you guys will be able to travel home in the summertime, so taking a short trip home prior to your move can really help. Feel connected with old friends and family. And look, it's not a one size fits all. It's what works for you. And also just embracing the change and considering the challenges is a big one as well. So there'll always be various challenges associated with a big move. And talk to people who've made the move, identify some of the challenges you might face on return, and try and counter these by making a list on how you might respond to these challenges. And then finally, just reaching out for support, whether it's ourselves, citizens information, if it's professional advice from the Teaching Council or the Department of Education for teachers. And then we have a number of mental health resources as well. So this is really important to point that if you're, a lot of people feel they have mental health problems when they come home with the adjustment of moving. So there are lots of supports which we've outlined on our website as well. So yourmentalhealth.ie, Help Link, another organization that can offer support for you even while you're abroad. So check out these resources on the website that we have. And yeah, I think I've just about covered everything on our end. So I hope that I haven't gone too far over ourselves. And also, sorry, yeah, we have a conference coming up, a Returning to Ireland conference. It's going to be across the week of the 4th to the 7th of June. And we'll have a number of clinics that people can come on and ask us questions about. And we'll also have some panel discussions, which I know we've outlined here. So returning home, rebuilding your professional networks in Ireland, coming home panel, which are actually people who've made the journey home, who will be talking about their experience, whether it be the challenges, the benefits, and even, things around your sense of belonging and stuff like that people face when they come home. So really worth logging on to that one, especially, and hearing those stories and being able to ask them questions. And yeah, we'll have the virtual clinics as well. So if people have specific questions they want to ask us, they can log on and book a time slot with us to have a consultation. Great stuff. So I'm going to just pass over to our colleagues now in the Teaching Council. And so I'll just grab the slides here. Just 1 second. Gone off with me for some reason. Okay. Technology is not my strong point. No. There we are. Can everyone see that?
Yep, I can see that.
Yeah. Great stuff.
So I'll kick off, Niall, will I?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks a million, Niall. So it's lovely to join you all this evening, and thanks for the invite. I hope you're going to gain some useful information from our presentation. So my name is Siobhan Healy, and I'm Head of Registration in the Council. And I'm joined by my colleagues. I'm joined by Pat, who is our registration manager. So for any of you who qualified as a teacher in Ireland and are looking to register with us, Pat will be looking after your application. Cliona is the qualifications assessment manager. So if you qualified from outside of Ireland and you're applying to register with us, Cliona will be looking after your application. And I'm also joined by my colleague Avril Lenny, who is our vetting manager. So anyone who's applying for registration with the council will go through vetting, and Avril will be looking after that application. So if we move on to the next slide. I'm just going to briefly, the presentation is just going to cover information for you around, first of all, the role of the Teaching Council, and I suppose talk to you around why you would register with us. A quick look at the registration requirements, and then Pat is going to talk you through the application process for if you qualified in Ireland, Cliona if you qualified outside of Ireland, and then as I said, Avril, the vetting manager, will talk you through the vetting process for when you're applying for registration. So if we move to the next slide, I'll just briefly talk you through our role, which is we are basically, so the Teaching Council is the regulator of the teaching profession in Ireland. We were established by law in March 2006. So almost 18 years in existence, and I'm been in the organisation for 17 of those years. Our role is essentially about protecting the public. That's what a regulator's role is all about. And we do that through the regulation of the profession by setting registration requirements and setting standards for teachers in terms of entering the register of teachers. And then we obviously maintain that register. So anybody who is on that register of teachers have all met qualification standards and evidence of character standards. So have obviously reached the level of standard required for standing in classrooms teaching. So if we move on to the next role, which is looking at why would you register with the Teaching Council, and it's quite simple really. It's set down in law that if you want to be employed as a teacher in Ireland, you must be registered with the council in order to be paid. So I don't think anybody wants to be in a position that you're working for no money. So if you do want to be paid for your employment, as I said, it's set down in law that you need to be registered with the Teaching Council. So if we move on to the next slide, that's just a brief look at our register, how it currently stands. So we've over 122,000 teachers, almost 123,000 now registered with the council. So we do hold the largest number of registered professions for any regulator. And you'll see there the breakdown. So there's basically 5 routes to register with the Teaching Council. So you can register as a primary teacher, and you see there's just over 55,000 teachers registered there. You can also register with us if you qualify post-primary, and there's almost 50,000 registered post-primary teachers. You can also register with us in the area of further education. just over 18,000 registered teachers there. Other, which is route 4, and then we also have student teachers. So basically student teachers who are on an accredited programme in Ireland who've completed the first 2 years of the programme are eligible to register with us, which obviously won't be a route applicable to the audience here. So if you move on to the next slide, the next 4 slides look at the registration requirements in Ireland. I'll briefly skip through these just in the interest of time. Both these slides will be circulated, so you'll have this information if you need it. But for route 1 registration, that's primary, you need to have an accredited primary teacher education programme. Alternatively, coming from outside of Ireland, you will be assessed to ensure that your qualification is comparable with these requirements. Post-primary, route 2, you need to hold a teacher education programme focused on the post-primary age range and meet the requirements for at least 1 post-primary curricular subject. So our curricular subject requirements outline the requirements for each subject. There's currently 41 curricular subjects recognised in Ireland, and that document there, curricular subject requirements, can be found on our website, and that will detail through for you the requirements for each of those subjects. The third route of registration then on the next slide is further education. For this route, you'd need to have a level 8 degree or a level 7 with relevant experience. And if you meet that degree requirement, you are eligible to gain conditional registration with the council, and you have a period of 3 years to complete a teacher education programme aimed at further education. Alternatively, you may have that teacher education programme in further ed at the point of entry to the register and gain full registration. And then our route 4 is basically for teachers who've qualified outside of Ireland with teacher education qualification specialising in special educational needs. So I would assume the audience here, we're probably looking at route 1 and route 2, primary and post-primary, but route 3 and route 4 there also if they're applicable to yourselves. So if we move on then, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Pat, as I said, who's the registration manager, and she's going to talk you through how to apply for registration if you qualified in Ireland. So over to yourself, Pat.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. So Siobhan outlined the registration requirements for those who qualified in Ireland. So if you have qualified in Ireland, you may apply for registration online using the Rego 1 application form, which you'll find on the My Registration portal on the Teaching Council's website. So when completing your application form, you'll be required to upload photos of scans of academic transcript of results for each year of your qualifications. The final year transcript must include your overall result. You'll also have to upload a completed fit and proper person character reference, and that blank form is part of the application form, so you'd have to download it, have it filled in and upload it. You'll need photos or scans of acceptable proof of ID and proof of address. And as you know, everyone who works with children and vulnerable people is legally required to be vetted by the NVB, the National Vetting Bureau. And vetting forms part of the registration application. It's an essential part of it. The initial registration fee is €90, and thereafter you're required to pay an annual renewal fee of €65. So now you might move to the next slide there, thanks. So this covers people who are previously registered and now returning to the register. So the Teaching Council have put in place a tailored registration process for teachers who were previously registered, lapsed, and are now looking to return to the register. These applications, again, can be made online via the My Registration portal on the website. If you had previously provided transcript of results with your initial application, you won't be required to submit these again because we'll have them on file. You will, however, be required to submit an up-to-date, fit and proper person character reference form, as well as getting vetted. We have a dedicated team assigned to these applications, and I'll have put a link into the slide which provides information on completing the application form and the documentation that is required, so you can have a look at that later. So the next slide then covers DREHID. So as you know, DREHID is the Irish word for bridge, and it's the state-recognised induction process for primary and post-primary teachers. It is not possible to complete DREHID outside of Ireland, as DREHID is based on the teaching of the Irish state curriculum within recognised schools. It may be possible to complete a state-recognised induction programme in another country in the world in lieu of DREHID, but I can tell you that a state-recognised induction process is not available in the UAE, and therefore it is not possible to complete a process similar to DREHID while working there. All newly qualified teachers and teachers registering with us for the first time will have the condition of DREHID applied to their registration. They're given 3 years to complete the process, and once completed, full registration status is applied. So whereas you have conditional, after you can be DREAD, you'll be given full. If you require additional time beyond the 3 years, you can apply for an extension of time. You may apply for DREAD when you secure an offer of employment in a school that is trained in delivering the DREAD process. The employment must be in an eligible setting. And what that means is it must be paid employment in a permanent, temporary or substitute capacity. Period of employment must meet or exceed the required minimum time frame of 60 consecutive days of employment for primary teachers and a block of 200 hours of employment for post-primary teachers. An application to complete the DREAD process must be made within 5 working days of commencing employment. Before applying for DREAD, a teacher must, of course, consult with their school principal to ensure their approval to facilitate you through the process with the support of a professional support team, which is in the school. Applications for DREAD may be made online via the My Registration portal on the Teaching Council's website. And again, I'll have enclosed a link there which will provide you with as much information as you need on the DREAD process. And that's it. I'll hand over to, I think it's Clean now that's going to cover teachers who qualified outside of Ireland.
Yeah, good evening. I understand the majority of the audience have perhaps qualified in Ireland, and after I speak, Avril will be coming in speaking about vetting. So I'm going to go through the next few slides pretty quickly, just being conscious of time. So if you qualified outside of the Republic of Ireland, your application is assessed in line with EU Directive 2005/36. That allows for the mutual recognition of professional qualifications, and it's applied globally. So whether you qualified within the EU or outside the EU, the same rules and regulations would apply. Qualifications are assessed for comparability with graduates of Teaching Council accredited programmes in Ireland, and Siobhan referenced those requirements earlier on for Route 1 and Route 2. Primarily, and every assessment is done individually. It takes into account teaching experience and lifelong learning, so there's a holistic element to it. When the qualifications are assessed, they're assessed for primary against primary programs. For post-primary, it's the initial teacher education and the curricular subject that you would be looking to teach at post-primary. Recognition can be granted subject to conditions. So if you don't meet the same requirements as graduates here, we can identify qualification shortfalls. If you have qualified outside of the Republic of Ireland and you wish to apply for registration, you need to be mindful of the time frame for applications. The directive lays out that the outcomes have to be issued within 12 weeks. However, our average processing time is 4 to 8 weeks. So just be conscious of that in terms of planning and returning home. We average about 600 applications per year, so it's quite a lot to go through. If you want to go to the next slide, please. The application process, similar to the application process that Pat outlined, the main difference here is that you have to submit evidence of full registration from the relevant competent authority. So, for example, if you qualified in the UK or from a university in England, you would have to provide evidence of qualified teacher status, so QTS, and induction. And that induction is issued by the Teaching Regulation Agency in the UK. So it's important that you are fully qualified before you're eligible to apply for registration. As with the, if you qualified in Ireland, you still apply online, and there's application guidelines available on our website as well. You'd have to submit evidence such as transcripts, module descriptors. You'd have to submit the vetting documentation, the character reference form, and the fees are outlined there as well. We'll go to the next one. So qualification shortfalls could be made up of shortfalls within your teacher education or within the curricular subject. And I'll maybe move on to the next slide just to explain how you can address those shortfalls. So under the directive, you can address them through an aptitude test or adaptation period. Aptitude test is where you do a demonstration of skills and knowledge. For example, sit a module, do an exam, submit that transcript to us. An adaptation period then is where you do a period of 3 years supervised practice, where you're mentored or supervised by another registered teacher. And the next one. You have 3 years to complete your condition of qualification shortfall. All dates will be outlined, you'll be kept informed, you'll be sent reminders. And if for any practical reason or life reason, etc., you can always look for an extension as well to that 3-year period. There's an extension process available on our website. Next one. I'll pass over to Avril now, who outlined the vetting process.
Thanks, Cleena, and hi everyone. My name is Avril Lennon and I'm the vetting manager. So I'll just go through the vetting process, which includes both the Irish vetting process done by the NVB and also the overseas police clearance requirements that we require as well. So I suppose just to outline the legislation first, under the Children and Vulnerable Persons Acts 2012 to 2016, everyone who works with children and vulnerable people must be vetted by the NVB. So that's a requirement, that's the law. And then also as part of registration, you must be vetted. So we assess you to be a fit, proper person to join the Register of Teachers. So just the second bullet point there, we do this, the Teaching Council administers vetting for all teachers in Ireland. So there's vetting for initial registration. So if you're applying for registration for the first time, or maybe you've lapsed off the register and you're applying again, you need to go through the vetting process. And then there's a re-vetting process. So once you are on the register and you've had your vetting is more than 3 years old, you will be invited to do re-vetting again. So there's, I suppose, 3 ways for us to do vetting. So there's the Irish vetting process and the overseas police clearance piece now. So if you move to the next slide, I'll go through both of those processes. So yeah, the Irish vetting process, so similar to what Pat and Cleena have outlined, we have an online My Registration portal. So if you go into the Teaching Council website, on the top right-hand corner, there's a My Registration button, and that's where you apply for your vetting and your registration. So when you create your My Registration account, if you don't already have one, you'll see a vetting tile there. And when you click on vetting, it will ask you to do stage 1. So stage 1 of the vetting process is managed by the Teaching Council. And this is where we require you to upload 2 pieces of information. So the first piece is the proof of identity document, and the second piece is proof of address. So the proof of identity document would be either your passport or your driving license, both of which must be current and in date. And then the proof of address must be a utility bill or I suppose a document from maybe a government agency, and it must be dated within the last 6 months. And that address must be the same as the address that you're going to have on your registration as well. So they both must match. So once the Teaching Council have reviewed both those pieces of information, we will pass you through then to the NVB, and you'll receive a link from the NVB to complete your vetting through their online vetting application form. So that's stage 2 of the process. That's the part that the NVB manage. So what does stage 2 include? So you've 30 days to actually complete the NVB part. And this is where you include all your addresses from birth to present. And that was the part to stress here today is that it must include your overseas addresses as well. And if you don't, I suppose, declare all of your addresses and we spot it at the end, we may have to, I suppose, revoke or cancel a disclosure that we've sent you. So it's really important that you declare all of your addresses, and that must include the overseas addresses as well. So what happens then is the NVB, once you complete your NVB application form, the NVB will do their checks. And once the vetting process is complete and the NVB have done their checks, they will issue the Teaching Council with a vetting disclosure. At this point, then you'll get 2 emails. So the first email will be an email from the NVB to you to say that your vetting disclosure has been sent to the Teaching Council. And the second email then will be from ourselves in the Teaching Council to say that your vetting disclosure is now available to you through Digitary. So Digitary is the online portal that we use to share vetting disclosures. And sorry, I should probably explain, vetting disclosure is the result of the vetting check that the NVB have carried out. So it's just called a disclosure. I suppose that's just the terminology they use. So Digitary, to access your Digitary, you must set up an account. And I suppose I haven't gone through it in these slides because we're kind of pressed for time, but if you go onto our website and under the vetting tab at the top, there's clear information about Digitary and the process for setting up your account. So we can never email a vetting disclosure to you. We're not allowed. It's a secure document. It's been encrypted. So that's, I suppose, the purpose of using Digitary. Just to say, I suppose there can be so the vetting disclosure can include a nil disclosure. So that means that nothing has come back, so that there's no further action to be taken. If there is a trace disclosure, so if there's maybe an issue on your vetting disclosure, there might be a case pending or a case that has gone to court and that it's on the disclosure, we may have to they may have to go to our fit and proper assessment panel. So again, I didn't cover that in these slides, but there's information on the fit and proper assessments included on our website for you to look at. So I suppose that's the Irish National Vetting Bureau vetting piece. So the second piece that we require for anyone who's lived outside of the Republic of Ireland for, I suppose, 12 months or more, you do need to provide national police clearance from each country where you've lived. And I suppose the key point here is that it needs to be national police clearance. I've included a link there to the Ministry of Interior United Arab Emirates site. So sometimes teachers are sending us in, say, clearance from Dubai or Abu Dhabi. That's not national police clearance. It must come from the Ministry of Interior. And the website is provided for you there. So when you log into that site, what you're looking for is a clear criminal record certificate. So that's the document that we're looking for. And I suppose that can take time. So our advice, similar to what you've heard from Niall, is if you are returning home and you are going to be registering, make sure and do these, get these steps done as soon as possible, because they can take time. They can hold up your registration. So we can't complete your registration or finalise your registration until your vetting and your overseas clearance, police clearance has been fully complete. So I suppose it's just really important that you give yourself time to do the vetting piece, because if you do have overseas addresses, it might delay it when it's down with the NVB. So I think that's the vetting slides. Yeah, thanks very much.
Niall, you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm going to pass over now, and thank you so much to the Teaching Council for really informative detailed information there. We're going to pass over to Michael now for the Citizens Information Board, who he's going to run through the Citizens Information Returning to Ireland portal, which is a really great resource, and then just talk specifically, I think, on managing money, which is a very important part of return, and then also shipping your belongings home. Thanks.
Great, everyone should be able to see this. Just starts shrieking or something if it's not visible. Great, thank you. So very quickly, so the Returning to Ireland portal is part of the broader Citizens Information online website, and I'm going to actually go through my slides, and then I'll quickly just navigate around on the actual page itself, so you have a little bit of a sense for how it works. But just to basically lay out the structure, the overall architecture of Citizens Information and Returning to Ireland, the specific portal, is that we have a range of pages or categories on different topics. So we have things like health, social welfare, employment, returning to Ireland, moving country. We've got other categories related to the environment, consumer protection, all sorts of things. And of course, my category that I manage through DFA, Department of Foreign Affairs, is returning to Ireland. So I'm always trying to figure out what things people returning, Irish citizens returning, need to know about. So we've got a lot of material on the Returning to Ireland portal that is aliased or connected to other parts of the Citizens Information website. So I have a lot of things about tax, on the Return to Ireland portal that are fed into from other categories on this website. And they're regularly updated. So whenever legislation changes, whenever statutory instruments are implemented by ministers, anything changes in the government, that's something that we immediately try to update as soon as possible so that the most up-to-date information is available to you all. Just a quick piece of housekeeping too, if we run out of time and you've got a really pressing query, or if you've got something really technical that I can't answer right now on this session, then we do have an RTI inbox that you can use to contact me, and I can go through things really in depth. You really get into the weeds about your particular unique circumstances. So it's the returning, the number 2, Ireland at ciboard.ie. Very good turnaround on that. I can usually get back to you quite quickly. And that's where, like I said, I can get into really technical detail about your particular circumstance if you have queries, or if you're a little bit lost, not quite sure how to handle something as you want plan to come back. I should also mention, just going forward, that we do have some new content that's being planned to roll out over the course of this year. We have country-specific pages. If you're returning from the United States or returning from the United Kingdom, obviously you're all coming from the Middle East, so that's not exactly relevant, but we also are going to have profession-specific pages, specifically for teachers, construction workers, medical field, those kinds of areas. Will have profession-specific pages in this Returning to Ireland portal that will have really relevant information for you. So very quickly, we're just going to talk about finances a little bit, and then we're also going to talk about shipping personal belongings. So just so you're a little bit aware, I'm going to show you the screenshot, and then I'm going to navigate over to the actual website just so you can kind of see how it works. It's all pretty intuitive and easy to do, but just so you're aware, when you go in to the Returning to Ireland category, you'll then be presented with a range of options like organizing your finances or planning your journey home. And then there are sub-pages within those pages that cover specific topics, and then they're organized around these anchor links, or you might call them subheadings. So you can click on them and then be given a text explanation of opening a bank account in Ireland, or do I have to pay tax? I'm transferring my savings. What about if I'm borrowing money? We've got these individual anchor links set up to answer these specific queries. And same thing here, Returning to Ireland. If you're planning your journey home, within that, we have a page about just shipping your belongings back to Ireland. I know I wish I'd have seen this page when I was myself moving over to Ireland from the United States back in 2019. It had some useful information that I was not aware of, but I should have found this back then. So what I'm going to do is just stop sharing this very briefly, and I'm now going to throw us over to the actual citizens information website. Great. So you now all should be able to see that. So like I said, this is the home page. We always have our most popular up here. As you could imagine, registering to vote right now is very high. We've got local elections coming up, EU elections. Everyone wants to get their public holidays, pensions, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, we've got a range of categories here on all kinds of topics: consumer, death and bereavement, justice, moving country. I deal a lot with that as well. Taxes in particular, social welfare is very popular because people want to know about the kinds of things that were already discussed: job seekers allowance, job seekers benefit, housing assistance payments, those kinds of things. We have those all here outlined in plain English, so it's presented in a way that would be easily understandable. Of course, if you go into Return to Ireland, you've got all of these different pages here that have sub-pages covering things like managing your money when you return to Ireland. So for example, if you were wondering about opening a bank account, we have a little bit of information here. One thing that it's worth just highlighting for you all is that when you're opening a bank account, you are going to need to have proof of identity as well as your address. So generally speaking, this means that you're probably not going to be able to open a bank account in Ireland until you're here, because you are going to need to verify your address here in Ireland. Now, you might already have a bank account, in which case it's not really an issue, but do just be aware of that generally speaking, to open a bank account in Ireland, you will need to be here. It's not something you're going to be able to do in advance. I should also mention we have documents here that you can use. We have a link to this, links to another part of our website, as you can see, right to the rules. And this is actually in the money and tax category on the Citizens Information website. So we're very liberal in our linking out to not only pages here on the Citizens Information page, but also to other state agencies, other department websites that will have forms you might need to fill out, or definitions or explainers or glossaries about relevant terms. Also, might be of interest to some of you all is tax residence and domicile. This is taken into account for several different types of taxes that you might be required to pay. And this is based on the number of days. They actually count the number of days that you spend in Ireland for a given tax year. And it's actually 183, not 182, not 184, it's 183. That will automatically make you a tax resident in Ireland. And if you plan on staying permanently in Ireland, your domicile or your home would be considered Ireland. So several taxes that you may have to pay in Ireland would include obviously income tax, but there's also deposit interest retention tax. I love that one because the acronym is DIRT, inheritance tax, capital gains, if you're selling property, gift taxes, those kinds of things. And we have a little guide, or we have a link out to the guide provided by Revenue that explains in a little bit more technical detail how tax residence works and things you might just want to be aware of. One other thing I wanted to point to now is bringing back your personal belongings. That's a very important logistical thing. I'm sure you all have things that you want to bring back with you. I know I certainly had things that I needed to ship over when I moved here in 2019. So again, this is in the Returning to Ireland category, and then in the Planning Your Journey Home section, I'll just actually click on this and show you. There's a range of things in here that you can click on. And then in the Planning Your Journey Home, you can say, go here. Anyway, shipping your personal belongings back. So obvious question, how much does it take, or how much does it cost, I should say? How much does it cost to ship items? And that's really going to depend on size, weight, shape, and the distance. So again, speaking from the American perspective, but obviously if you ship from California, that's different from shipping from Florida. Of course, if you're shipping from the UAE, that might be a little different than if you were shipping from, say, Kuwait. So all those things have to be taken into account, and you're going to want to measure your items before you send them off, just to get a sense for what you might expect in terms of an estimate. So, and also if something's irregular in shape, try to measure it in small regular parts and then add them together. So chairs, for example, or other weirdly shaped objects that you might want to be sending back, a table or a bookshelf, something like that, something that might have weird curves to it. Also, big important question, do you have to pay customs duty or taxes? The answer is that yes, you very well may need to pay a customs duty, an excise duty, or VAT, value added tax, on your item or items. And this is normally calculated as a percentage of the goods value. So if they're non-commercial and they're valued at under 700 euro, you may be able to get a standard rate of 2.5%, but it may be more if we go over the 700 euro amount. There's also an excise duty that would be placed on any kind of alcoholic or tobacco related products that you might be importing. And then depending on if you're shipping from an EU country, obviously you wouldn't have to deal with that, but since you're all coming from outside of the EU, you would have to be aware of that. I should say that, very importantly, there are options to claim relief from customs duty and VAT if you're shipping your belongings from outside the European Union, and you can claim it through personal property, household goods, items that you live with, bikes, motorcycles, private vehicles, trailers, boats, all kinds of things like that, wedding gifts as well. But there are certain things that you can't get relief from customs duty and VAT on, and that would be things like tobacco, tools that would be used for businesses, or property that's being imported for commercial reasons. Again, a lot of this might not apply to you all, but just in case, just be aware that that is here. And there are time limits. It's very important to be aware that your eligibility does have to be squared with certain time limits. 6 months before you move, 12 months after you move, certain things have to be applied for in terms of VAT relief within a 12-month period. So just be aware that you've got a little bit of a time constraint. Also, got an anchor link here on what documents you might need when you're shipping items over. And in your case, since you're all coming from outside the EU, this is what's most pertinent. And they're going to need to be cleared by customs, basically. And to do this, you're going to need to email a completed transfer of residence form to Revenue 2 weeks before your goods arrive in Ireland. And this is going to speed up the process. What could potentially happen if you don't do this in advance, it could get held up by customs, and you could be here in Ireland waiting to get your stuff, and you're going to be told, oh, we're holding your stuff until you actually pay the customs fee that's required. So This form itself is, I think, quite straightforward, but we do have a little bit of an explanation here about how that works. And of course, if you've got any specific questions about filling out this transfer of residence form, do please get in contact and I'd be happy to go through it with you. I know I'm hustling through quite quickly because I do want to get to your questions, but just be aware that we're constantly updating this to reflect any changes in legislation or if new statutory instruments come into effect as a result of legislation through ministers' responsibilities. So I know that was a kind of whistle-stop tour, but yeah, I'll stop speaking now and be happy to take any questions or yeah.
That's brilliant. Thanks a million, Michael. Really, really informative. So I suppose at this point, we are going to open the floor to any questions that people might have. I know there's a lot of information, and I hope that people are a little more informed and able to make an informed decision about moving home. It can be very, very overwhelming. There can be a lot going on, but between ourselves and Citizens Information and the Teaching Council, we hope that we've covered a lot of information. And also, if you do have any follow-up questions, that's really, really, really encourage people to reach out to us as well.